Sometimes we are so reluctant to say yes to God simply because we don't know what yes will give us. We want to know the entire plan, the entire path for which God has brought us, and therefore we don't say yes. However, we still pray to God. We still ask God, please reveal to me what is in me. Please let me know what you want from me. But you're refusing to say yes. Now, once you say yes, those things will be revealed. God is expecting more from us. We have to start doing some things. We got to, like I said before, we got to make a move. Got to move that foot. You have to put some work into what you want. Turn that plate down and fast. Pray to God. Pray to God with an open heart, telling God you will give him all of you, not a piece of you. Because you can't give God a piece of you and expect to walk in your calling. You cannot give God a piece of you and expect to walk fully in your calling. Expect to walk boldly, confidently, knowing that whatever I'm doing in this life is for God, when you know you're only giving God a piece of you. And yet we still, giving God just a piece of us, we still pray that same prayer. God, what is it that you want me to do in this season? He wants you to give all of him to you in this season, first of all. Give all of him. Give him all of you, is what I meant to say. Give him all of you first in this season. And once you give yourself to God, things will start to fall into place. But you must give yourself to God first. Thing, this is a term that I use quite often, selective spirituality. When we are thinking about seeking after God, we got to understand we cannot be selective with the request that God has made for us. He wants all of us, not a part of us. So you can't be selective with that. So once you decide to give God all of you moving forward, understand that there are going to be roadblocks. Understand there's going to be things in your mind that you look as a hindrance, when in reality that path and those little roadblocks are just things placed and set in stone. So when you move up and when you elevate, you actually become who you're required to be. Understand there's levels to this. And that goes back to something that I had briefly spoken on the other day when I was talking about how God presents us with a test, because something happened the other day and God prepared me beforehand. God made it clear exactly what would happen. It was clear as day, but I did not understand that within the next 30 minutes. See, sometimes when God gives you a message and gives you a word to share with his people, understand you're going to have to go through it first for that revelation for yourself and for the rest of the world. Understand everything I'm saying is not just for you, it's for me too. Because the words aren't coming from me. That's why it's not just for you. And with that being said, like I said before with the test, understand, God gives us these opportunities. And sometimes when we take a test, we fail it. We failed so quite oftenly. And we wonder why we're in the same predicaments, because that cycle, until you change your action and reaction, and sometimes attitude alone is the reason why you're going through that test. Because it wasn't what you're doing, it's what your thoughts. Understand your thoughts and stuff have a huge portion of whether God's going to elevate you or move you. Because if God said, if you're going to be like this in this time, then you're not ready to be moved up. Because when you move up, understand there's going to be people and things that aren't going to go with what I've called you to be. Because the higher and the closer you get to God, there are going to be more things coming at you. It doesn't mean the less, it's less. But when you move up with God, you got to have that mindset. It's that shift in mindset that changes. Like something I was thinking about, something I wrote on my board, because I write motivational stuff daily. And I had wrote, growth requires an internal shift. Understand, you're shifting on the inside. It's not the outside world. Understand that it's an internal shift. We be so worried about what everybody else doing. We need to work on what's in the inside of us. And we expect God to move us. And with that being said, going back to this test, right? That preparation, God prepared me. He showed me something. That this season is a season for us to silence ourselves and allow our spirit to be loud. Be silent in the flesh and loud in the spirit. Because our flesh is doing some things. Our flesh is causing disruption and corruption in the world. So at this moment, this is a season where you and your flesh is going to be at battle. Your flesh and your spirit is going to be at a constant battle during this season. But understand, you need to silence your flesh and allow your spirit to be loud and speak boldly. That means walking and moving in silence. When I say silence, again, I'm speaking of the flesh in you. So it gets to a point where when you walk and the way you carry yourself is enough talk all alone. You don't have to tell people what you're doing. You have to let people know what type of walk you on with God for them to see that the God in you. We got to get out there showing and showboating what God has done for us, when there's a difference between testimony and sitting there and, thinking that we are holier than thou when we are not. forgetting where we came from. Silence, that's flesh right there. That's flesh. Silence that flesh and let that spirit speak loud. And so with that goes back to that same thing with the test. Like I said, oftentimes it's our attitude alone. Our attitude alone is the reason why we are not being elevated or moved up. It's our attitude. And that brings me back to something else I was speaking on the other day when I was talking about how it's something I haven't uploaded yet, and this is God's way of getting it how he wants it to be done, because I move on God's timing and not my own. And so with that being said, I was sitting there thinking about how, like, for instance, we taking a quiz, right? That test. But best believe when God gives you a test, he already prepared you for it. And we sit here think like, oh, well, we think we going 10 steps backwards, when you got to remember, going them 10 steps back is being exactly where you need to be. It's putting you in a place and atmosphere to study that atmosphere, study that environment. So when God presents you with that test, that you know what to do in it. So in reality, God isn't setting you back. He's putting you right where you need to be to succeed. But we don't look at it like that. We look at it as, oh, God, something is holding us back. We're holding ourselves back. No, God put you there. He wanted you to be grounded. That's why you're there. You're not there for any other reason but to be grounded and to move when God tells you to move. And that goes back again to the testing. I'm going to keep bringing up the test because it's so important, because God had made something so clear to me. I got the message. I said, okay, God. I felt like this was God, but God sent me confirmation when I was presented with the test, because I was aware that I was in that test. And God gives us an opportunity to shift. God, in the midst of our test, we have that, because before you submit a test online or before you turn that paper in, you got time to check your answers, don't you? You got time to prepare yourself. But sometimes when we call ourselves checking back and making sure that we are in one accord with the things that we have been aligned with, we're so busy worrying about somebody else's test. We're so busy looking at, well, look, for this particular question, this circumstance, it seems like the same type of test that I've been in. She did this. So maybe if I do what she did, then maybe I get through it. No, that's not how it works. Because every test, every path that God has placed us on, every calling that God has placed over our lives, everything that God has placed inside of our lives is just for us alone. Our walk and our path and our journey, although it may look the same, it is not the same. It isn't. So we can't sit here and go to man to give us answers that God has already filled us with. We look to man to give us answers that God has given us. Them 10 steps back was your answer right there. Look within those things that God, look within those circumstances. Think about why you're going through the things you're going through, and stop having selective spirituality. Be all in with God. Don't doubt God for a second. Don't doubt God for a second when it comes to anything. Just as my favorite scripture, be anxious for nothing. We cannot be anxious in the season. We cannot be anxious because it's a time for us to move. It's a time for us to make a move when God says move, which means we got to get to a point we are working on our spirit and stronging our spirit in God so that we can fight off the fleshly things of the world, so that when our flesh wants to be bold and confident, our spirit overpowers it. That's what we're looking to do in this season.